Imagine it's 1992. No apps, no Alexa, no DoorDash. Just a sharp-minded mom turning chaos into clockwork with nothing but a spiral notebook and pure genius. She wasn't just surviving the household. She was outsmarting the system, stockpiling cereal at half price every 6 weeks, whipping up laundry detergent for pennies that cleaned better than store-bought. These 90s housewives mastered invisible hacks that saved thousands and sparked quiet pride we've totally forgotten. Want to reclaim that clever edge? Stick around. I'm revealing the simple, brilliant tricks that made them unstoppable. You won't believe how much we've lost until now. Picture this. It's 1992, and somewhere in suburban America, a mother stands in her kitchen at 6:30 in the morning, coffee brewing, already 3 steps ahead of the chaos about to unfold. No smartphone reminders, no meal prep apps, just her, a well-worn spiral notebook, and decades of accumulated wisdom passed down from her own mother. These women didn't just run households, they orchestrated them with a precision that would make today's productivity gurus weep with envy. What most people don't realize is that the real magic happened in the invisible moments. While we remember the casseroles and the pristine lawns, we've forgotten the brilliant little systems that made it all possible. Take Linda from Ohio, who every Sunday night would stand at her kitchen counter with the week's grocery store circulars spread out like battle plans. She wasn't just clipping coupons randomly. She was cross-referencing sales cycles, knowing that every 6 weeks her family's favorite cereal would drop to half price. She'd buy 8 boxes, stack them in the basement pantry she'd organized with masking tape labels, and never pay full price again. But it went deeper than saving a few cents. These women understood something we've lost, the profound satisfaction of beating the system through sheer cleverness. When Carol from Michigan discovered she could make her own laundry detergent for 17 cents a load instead of buying it for $1.50, it wasn't just about the money, it was about the quiet pride of walking past that expensive aisle, knowing she'd figured out something better. She'd mix washing soda, borax, and grated Fell's naphtha soap in an old ice cream bucket, and her clothes came out just as clean, sometimes cleaner. The kitchen became their laboratory. Dining rooms transformed into command centers. These weren't just chores they were completing. They were puzzles they were solving, challenges they were conquering with nothing but ingenuity and determination. And the tricks they developed, most of them have been completely forgotten, buried under our modern convenience culture until now. The real genius showed up in how they handled mornings. While today we're frantically packing lunches and searching for missing shoes, women in the 80s had a different approach entirely. Janet from Pennsylvania perfected what she called her evening advantage, a 15-minute ritual every night that made mornings feel like they ran on autopilot. Right after dinner, while the kitchen was already in cleanup mode, she'd pull out 5 small Tupperware containers. Each one got filled with the next day's lunch components: crackers in one, carrot sticks in another, a small container of peanut butter, some apple slices soaked briefly in lemon water to prevent browning. The sandwich ingredients would be laid out in the fridge in assembly line order. Come morning, she wasn't starting from scratch. She was just connecting the dots. Her kids never ate the same lunch twice in 2 weeks because she had a rotating menu written on an index card taped inside her cupboard door. But the clothing battles? That's where these women truly shine. Margaret from Texas had 4 kids and exactly 0 patience for the morning "I don't have anything to wear" drama. Every Sunday afternoon, she'd sit with each child individually and they'd plan out the week's outfits together, not just picking clothes, actually laying them out in complete sets, including underwear and socks on labeled hangers. Monday's outfit, Tuesday's outfit, all the way through Friday. The hangers went back in the closet in order, and if someone wanted to change the plan, they had to do it over the weekend, not at 7:15 on a Wednesday morning when everyone needed to leave in 10 minutes. She discovered this trick after one particularly disastrous morning when her youngest melted down over a shirt, making everyone late. Never again, she decided. The time investment on Sunday, maybe 45 minutes total, bought her peaceful weekday mornings and taught her kids planning skills without a single lecture. They could see their whole week at a glance, and that visibility somehow made everything easier. The way these women handled leftovers deserves its own chapter in the history of household management. Nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, went to waste in these kitchens. But this wasn't the sad eat the same meatloaf for 4 days approach. This was culinary reinvention that would impress today's farm-to-table chefs. Barbara from Wisconsin had what she called her Thursday soup pot. Every week, without fail, she'd pull out her largest stock pot on Thursday morning. Inside went all the week's vegetable scraps she'd been saving in a gallon freezer bag. Onion ends, celery leaves, carrot peels, the bones from Monday's chicken dinner, the last bit of mashed potatoes from Wednesday. She'd fill it with water, add some herbs from her windowsill garden, and let it simmer all day until the house smelled like comfort itself. By evening, she'd strain out the solids, and what remained was the most flavorful broth you'd ever taste. Sometimes it became chicken noodle soup with leftover rotisserie chicken she'd shredded and frozen. Other times it transformed into vegetable barley soup with whatever needed using up. Her family thought she was just an amazing cook. Really, she was an amazing strategist who understood that garbage was just ingredients you hadn't figured out yet. Patricia from California mastered the art of the planned leftover. When she made a roast for Sunday dinner, she deliberately cooked it bigger than needed. Monday night, the cold roast became French dip sandwiches with au jus she'd saved from Sunday's drippings. Tuesday, any remaining meat got diced into beef and vegetable soup. Wednesday, if there was still some left, it became beef fried rice with day-old rice from Tuesday's side dish. Same meat, 4 completely different meals, and her family never felt like they were eating leftovers because each meal stood on its own. She wasn't reheating, she was reimagining. The grocery store trips of the 70s and 80s were masterclasses in strategic thinking that would impress any business consultant today. These women didn't just shop, they studied patterns, anticipated needs, and turned saving money into an art form that went way beyond cutting coupons. Ruth from Illinois kept a price book. This wasn't some fancy store-bought planner. It was a small spiral notebook that lived in her purse. Every time she bought something, she'd jot down the price, the store, and the date. Over time, she knew exactly when chicken would go on sale at Jewel versus Dominic's, when canned tomatoes would drop to their lowest price of the season, when to stock up and when to hold back. She could predict with eerie accuracy that the week before Easter, ham would hit rock-bottom prices, and she'd buy 2, one for Easter dinner and one to freeze for summer sandwiches. But the really clever part? She understood unit pricing before stores made it easy. She'd bring a tiny calculator and would stand in the aisle, actually doing the math. The bigger box looked cheaper, but was it really when you calculated the per ounce cost? Often it wasn't, and she'd walk away with 3 smaller boxes instead, saving 30 cents that she'd note in her little book with quiet satisfaction. Her kids thought she was crazy standing there calculating, but that woman retired with more savings than families who earned twice what her husband brought home. Dorothy from Indiana took it even further. She'd befriend the stock clerks, learning delivery schedules. She knew that Tuesday mornings meant fresh markdowns on meat that was approaching its sell-by date. Perfectly good meat that just needed to be cooked or frozen that day. She'd arrive at the store at 8:05, right when the manager made his rounds with the markdown stickers, and she'd walk out with premium steaks for the price of ground beef. Was she being cheap? No, she was being brilliant. The way these housewives managed clothing and laundry revealed an understanding of fabric care and household chemistry that's been almost entirely lost. They could make clothes last twice as long as ours do now, and they did it without spending a fortune on special products. Marie from New Jersey never ever washed jeans after just one wear, unless they were actually dirty. This was revolutionary at a time when people thought everything had to be laundered constantly. She understood that denim lasted longer with less washing, so she'd spot clean with a damp cloth, hang them to air out, and only wash when truly necessary. Her kids' school jeans lasted multiple school years instead of wearing out by January. She also mastered the art of cold water washing decades before it became an environmental talking point. Almost everything went in cold water, with the exception of whites and towels. Hot water was expensive, it cost money to heat, and it wore out clothes faster. Her electricity bills were lower, her clothes lasted longer, and everything came out just as clean because she'd discovered that pre-treating stains was way more important than water temperature. The pre-treating itself was an art form. She kept a small bucket under her bathroom sink filled with a solution of water, a squirt of Dawn, and a splash of hydrogen peroxide. When her kids came home with grass stains, food stains, or mystery laundry smudges. The clothes went directly into the bucket to soak for an hour before laundry day. The stains lifted out like magic because they never got the chance to set in and become permanent. Alice from Georgia took clothing preservation even further with her sweater drying technique. She never ever put sweaters in the dryer. Instead, she'd lay out a bath towel on the floor, place the wet sweater on top, roll the whole thing up like a burrito to squeeze out excess water, then unroll it and lay the sweater flat on a dry towel to air dry. Her sweaters never shrank, never pilled as badly, and lasted for years while her sister kept complaining about her clothes shrinking and wearing out. Kitchen efficiency in these homes operated on principles that would make modern industrial engineers nod in appreciation. Everything had its place, and that place was chosen for maximum efficiency, not aesthetics. Kathleen from Massachusetts arranged her kitchen like a professional chef's station without ever having stepped foot in a culinary school. Her most used items, the wooden spoon, the spatula, the can opener, lived in a crock right next to the stove where her hand could grab them without thought. Her spices weren't alphabetized in some Pinterest-perfect arrangement. They were organized by frequency of use. Salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, right in front. The specialty spices she used once a month were in the back. Her pots and pans nested inside each other, with the lids stored vertically in a repurposed dish rack under the sink. No digging, no avalanche when you pulled one out, no wasted space. She could access any piece of cookware in under 5 seconds, which, over a lifetime of cooking, saved her literal days of cumulative time. But the real stroke of genius was her cooking day strategy. Once a month, she'd dedicate a Saturday to cooking. Not just one meal. She'd make 6 different casseroles, 4 batches of soup, a giant pot of spaghetti sauce, meatballs, and sometimes a couple of pans of lasagna. Everything went into aluminum pans from the dollar store, got wrapped tightly, labeled with masking tape and a marker, and stacked in her chest freezer in the basement like edible Jenga blocks. On crazy weeknight evenings, when everyone had different schedules, she'd pull out a frozen casserole at lunchtime, let it thaw in the fridge, and pop it in the oven at 5:30. Dinner was ready at 6:15. The house smelled amazing, and she'd spent maybe 10 minutes of actual hands-on time. Her secret? She wasn't cooking 6 different meals. She was doubling or tripling recipes she was already making, so it barely took any extra time, but created weeks' worth of future convenience. The budgeting tricks these women employed would put modern financial advisors to shame. They ran their households like small businesses, tracking every dollar with a precision that came from necessity but evolved into mastery. Frances from Iowa used the envelope system, but not the way you've heard about it. She didn't just divide her husband's paycheck into categories. She had a master envelope for each month of the year. In January's envelope, she'd stash a little extra for property taxes that were due in June. In May's envelope, she'd save for Christmas shopping in December. She was always planning 3 to 6 months ahead, smoothing out the bumps that destroyed other families' budgets. Inside her purse, she carried exactly $4 in ones at all times, her emergency discretionary fund. If one of the kids needed money for a school activity, or if she saw something on sale that was too good to pass up, she had it. But here's the clever part. At the end of every week, if she still had any of those $4, they went into a glass jar on her dresser. That jar funded her annual solo weekend trip to visit her sister, something she did for her sanity without ever touching the family budget. Donna from Florida mastered the art of the price stockpile, but with items that never occurred to anyone else. While other women stockpiled canned goods, she stockpiled gift wrap, cards, and batteries. After every major holiday, Christmas, Valentine's Day, birthdays, she'd hit the stores when wrapping paper went 75% off. She'd buy next year's supplies for a quarter of the price, store them in labeled boxes in her hall closet, and never paid full price for a greeting card again. $3 here, $5 there. It added up to hundreds by year's end. The wisdom these housewives carried went beyond tips and tricks into something deeper, a whole philosophy of household management built on pride, creativity, and the genuine satisfaction of solving problems with your own 2 hands and your own clever mind. Rebecca from Tennessee used to say that running a household was like conducting an orchestra. Everything had to come together at the right time, in the right way, with the right preparation. Her secret weapon was her master notebook, a 3-ring binder where she kept everything everything that mattered. Menu plans from previous months so she could rotate favorites. Lists of gifts she'd given people so she never repeated. Measurements for her kids' feet so she could spot good shoe sales even when they weren't with her. Phone numbers for every repair person who'd ever done good work. Recipes she'd clipped and actually tried, with notes on what worked and what didn't. This wasn't just organization. This was institutional knowledge being preserved, refined, and passed down. When her daughter got married, Rebecca gave her a copy of that notebook with a note that said, "This is 20 years of figuring things out so you don't have to." What made these women remarkable wasn't that they had more time or more money. They had less of both. What they had instead was resourcefulness, born from necessity that blossomed into genuine skill. They looked at constraints as puzzles to solve, not obstacles to complain about. They found deep satisfaction in stretching a dollar, making something beautiful from scraps, feeding their families well on tight budgets, and keeping their homes running smoothly through sheer determination and cleverness. We've traded their wisdom for convenience, their resourcefulness for consumption, their pride in doing it themselves for the ease of buying it ready-made. But somewhere in the space between their frugality and our excess lies a beautiful middle ground, a place where we remember that the best solutions often come not from spending more, but from thinking better. These housewives proved it every single day in 1,000 small ways that added up to extraordinary lives lived well within their means and with a quiet dignity that deserves to be remembered.